Thank you. In fact, Ray and I were back there, and as people were leaving, we said, Ray, we might be ending talking to each other. Someday they'll put us first instead of last, right, Ray? Anyway, I'm Leona Rocha Wilson. I was born and raised on Maui, H-Poko to be exact. I went to Baldwin High School, graduated Baldwin High, and after graduating from high school, I, with my mother's wisdom, joined the service. I was a WAC. I got my education on the GI Bill. I studied at night. I know the value of education. The reason incidentally, Duke was here earlier, and I really have to say this. In his wisdom, he is suggesting that we go ahead and do an independent audit. With a budget that we have in our education system of $1.7 billion. $1.7 billion, imagine that, right? In his wisdom, he's saying, let's do an audit. Let's see where the funds are going. I'm a businesswoman. I've owned my own company, national company. I understand finances. I understand that when we are spending that kind of money, we better know where it's going. We also better know what we're getting for that money. What are our kids learning? And how are they learning? What is the environment? What are our teachers, the wonderful teachers that we do have, and the principals? Let's take a look at the entire study or the entire education system and produce, incidentally, the reason I'm running for this, besides the passion that I have for education, which my mother and father gave to me, they always taught me that education was a privilege, not a right, a privilege. And I believe that. And I have the passion for education. I'm not a teacher. I'm a business person, all right? So, but I will approach education as I would my business, as I would for your children and for the state. Do you know we have a dropout rate currently in our high schools? Hawaii has a dropout rate of 21 out of every 100 kids are dropping out of school. These are our children. Nationally, 33 out of 100 are dropping out of school. So we're not as bad as the national average. Am I willing to accept it? I said no. And hence, that's the reason I am running. And I will tell you later how we can solve this problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leona. Nazar?
Caught inside the sheet here. And I also, starting from that standpoint, made the decision to run because I saw what happened last year. And to me, I'm a retired teacher. I taught for 40 years. And I looked at what happened last year and I said, how could that happen? The purpose for schools is the education of the children. And the schools were closed for the children. So I looked in the list of school board members, and I've worked with a number over the years, but I realized when I looked through the list, there were no teachers on the school board in the state of Hawaii. Not a one. They were the two members that were teachers once. One was 30 years ago, Carolyn, who went to Maui High, I studied. And the other one was 40 years ago. Life has changed. That bothered me a lot, and I looked back further and remembered the last time I saw a teacher was a nice young man when I was working as a negotiator for the teacher's contract at the state. He was in his first year of teaching at an Episcopal school on Oahu. And there was another nice lady that I worked with closely who was a preschool teacher in a private preschool. That bothered me a great deal. If you're going to have a hospital board, and the hospital board has no doctors or nurses on the board, what do you think the purpose of that hospital is? It has nothing to do with the patients. And that's the feeling I was getting looking at. I know a lot of the board members because I worked with them when I was negotiating, when I was with the union, and a few other factors, one of which was my job to work with the board. I'm one of the founders of the charter school law in the state. And it was my job to convince the Board of Education, the Department of Education, and the Teachers Union to support the concept of a charter school. I also worked with the legislature, but we had a lot to work with the legislature. I was successful. All three of those supported us 100%, well, 98%, to have a charter school, and they spoke for us at the legislature. We got it. Now all three of them don't want us anymore as charter schools. That's another problem. But the purpose for me of running again was back to the purpose of education. When I first started teaching, there was one purpose of education, and that was to provide labor. I started in a mining camp. The idea was every kid in that mining camp, every boy, of course, would be working in the mines, and we were training them to do so. The girls had their responsibility. That was to get married and take care of the miners. That world is gone. And we also had no divorces. I never saw a child of a divorced family for the first 5 years of teaching. No mothers worked outside the home. The children went home to lunch. I think those days are gone. We're in a whole different world, and we need to deal with that different world. And that's what my whole life has been.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Okay, you both will get the same question, and you might understand the diversity of where the board was coming from after you hear it all. So the question for you both is, and we'll begin with Leona. In our community, there are concerns about the condition of our schools, overcrowding in the classrooms, furlough days, public transportation to and from school, and the overall criticism that education in Hawaii is failing to meet minimum standards. What do you envision is your role if elected to the board, and what will you do to address these concerns? A minute and a half.
First of all, if I may correct you, there are 4 teachers currently on the Board of Education. Within District 2, there is Herb Watanabe from the Big Island.
40 years ago.
Okay, well, you just retired. How long have you been retired? 5 years? Okay. You're not a current teacher. In any case, we have Herb Watanabe, who is currently on the board, and we have Maggie Cox, who is a master teacher and a principal, 2 other. So the words that were used, that there are no teachers on the board, is not correct. In any case, what would I do? What would I do? I have to tell you, funding has been such a problem. You know, our budget was at $2.4 billion. Now it's down to 1.7. That is a huge amount. There's no question about that. But budget has hit, funds has hit all of us. The funding comes from the legislature. The Board of Education sets policy. All right? So what we need to do is, there's a matrix. I heard you need more schools here. All right? I understand that you have, your population is increasing. I would require that the matrix that I would fight for Maui students. We're getting our high school in Kihei. And I know your schools are terrific here, and you should have it as well.
Thank you. Basically, what I would do in a minute and a half, you know, after walking on the water and a few other things to make it happen. You know, the basic thing that can happen is the restructuring of our school system. I'm looking at it from a teacher's standpoint. The most important thing is the student. Therefore, we need schools to be very locally based. Every school must meet the needs of the student and the community, and the teachers were there. Legislature put in a law says every school can have their own local board. Unfortunately, it got translated and they can have a board, but they have no money and no power, but you can have a board. The big problem is trust. And my role would be working with the other board members, to give them some trust. The idea of empowering the local schools, empowering the teachers, empowering the community to start making their own decisions, putting the money down to them, providing the training so they can do it, because every community has different needs, and that's what the school needs to offer. A community-based school, because Hawaii is full of many, many different communities. There's no one package for all of us. That's what I'd start with.
Thank you, Leona. Minute and a half to elaborate.
Okay. I mentioned earlier about the dropout rate and how it affects all of us. You know, for every dropout, every high school dropout, it costs you, we're at the right place. It costs the taxpayers $1.5 million to $2 million per dropout student. It cost us. For social programs, they're not working, so they're not paying into the system. So how do we solve that real quickly? Because I do want to address that. The dropout rate is, these are not stupid kids. These are kids that are bright. But you know what the problem is? Our school system, we must strengthen the two-path system. We must strengthen the path for college, and we must strengthen the career or the vocational tech studies. We must prepare our students and respect both those who want to go to college and respect those that want to enter the trades. The curriculum must change. I have already talked with 2 of the board members, and they are on the same wavelength as I am and strengthening the vocational studies. We have vocational studies now. Look, we lost in Honolulu, we lost the auto mechanic instructor at Moanalua. And we're looking like we might be in trouble at Maui High, and we have a globally successful auto mechanic program there. We need to secure vocational and college prep students.
Thank you. My 2 sons, by the way, did the college, and now they're making, one is a journeyman electrician, and the other one is a house painter. College doesn't really solve a problem, does it? You need a job, Anyway, what I would say basically is, I really feel the need for a teacher, someone who's been in the trenches, who cares about the kids, and all my focus is about the kids. 40 years I've made changes, besides the charter school into not just Maui, but the law for the charter schools. Besides the stuff I've done all those years, it's the idea of working with people, intelligent people, to help them understand so they can make changes so we can have a great system. We were successful with the charter school in Kihei. We were also successful with the new high school that's going to be built. I started with that group in the beginning. We lost it because of that stupid list of where we ranked. Yeah, and then I stayed with it. I've been on that committee for building that new high school right up to the end. Everything that we designed for that new high school back when we were starting is now in the new high school. It can be done. We can make all these changes, but we have to make people really want them.
Okay, so 2 minutes each for closing remarks. Leona, we'll start with you.
Incidentally, I have visited 3 out of your 4 schools here. I met with Mike Nakano before he retired. I met with him twice on the issue of the boarding school, and he asked me whether I would support it. I talked to Angus. Angus said, work with me, Leona. This is something we need to have. And you have it. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. I watched the young men clean the garden. I watched them work in the cafeteria. You have Lance, who is an ag teacher, teacher, and he's wonderful. I met with him. I met with Marsha Nakamura. She has a great program. I also met with Kaipo Miller. You have great principals here. You have great schools. You have great students. We need to work together as a community. And in fact, That being said, I think Lahaina, you probably are a model program for how the community works with schools. So I ask you, please, I will, no question, I will fight for our kids. I will work to see that what should be done is done. And I really would appreciate your support, and I thank the panel for all your wonderful questions.
Thank you, and I agree with Leona. And there's one more, the principal at Cam 3. He used to be my roommate when we were doing negotiations, and he was on the other. And I knew he'd make a great principal, but he had to give up his other job. Besides, he was teaching and working in, the restaurant world. But fabulous person too. My basic summary is the passion is with me. I could probably just sit and enjoy my retirement, but I never have sat and enjoyed my retirement. The first 3 years after I retired, I volunteered and I taught the stock market during the noon hours at Maui Waina. I also worked for MEDB. Economics is one of my fields with kids. And we worked with 3 fabulous economic teachers in the high schools on Maui and tried to, got recognition for them. Then I also worked providing the grants, including the agricultural grants from MEDB, which is A and B money for that part, plus the STEM grants, the science, technology, and so forth. And I was very successful with Lahaina Luna. There were some tremendous offerings up there, the proposals they put in. We got most of them passed as grants. Again, a heavy agricultural base, which it matches the needs of the community. That's what it's all about. There's a wonderful world. You have it right here in Lahaina. You've always had it here in Lahaina. My wife lived here in the early 60s, and she wasn't a hippie. She came before the hippies. And lived in the Buddhist temple where Hilo Hattie's is. This is a wonderful town. You need the schools for you. You don't need the schools for Kihei. You need them for you. Please make sure that that's what you get, no matter who's elected. Thank you.
In closing remarks with the school, education is so very important. And when I moved here 10 years ago, one of the first things I heard was, in Oahu, they pay bus drivers more than law enforcement agents and teachers. And that's something really hard to be thinking about, especially when you consider it. What I would like to suggest to both of you is, please also don't forget about the children that we have at the Maui Preparatory Academy. The West Maui Taxpayers Association was very instrumental in getting that school open. And we hope you all do a great job. Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates for the Board of Education. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us tonight. I know it was long, but I want to thank you for your attention, for being here. Please remember to vote November 2nd, ultimately.